My name is Evan Hale. I'm 42 years old, and ever since I was a kid, I've avoided the noise of crowded cities. People like to call me introverted, but that's not really accurate. I'm just addicted to silence. That's why, years ago, I bought a cabin tucked deep in the snowy woods of northern Vermont. I spend every Christmas season up here, especially because most neighbors head down to town, leaving the entire area completely empty. For me, this place has always been the definition of peace. Or at least, I thought it was. That night, I encountered something unlike anything I've ever faced in my life. I was sitting in front of the fireplace that evening, sipping hot chocolate. The wind outside had turned into a storm, but the cabin was warm, sleepily warm. It was almost 11 p.m. at that hour. The world usually falls silent. The nearest person is miles away. That's when I heard it. A voice, a human voice, singing a Christmas song, Jingle Bells. At first I thought I'd misheard, but the melody was so clear, so close. It was as if someone was standing right at my door singing it. When the words became distinct, I rose from the chair and walked toward the entrance. I looked through the peephole and froze. A man was standing on my porch. He wore an old coat and a red knit hat. His body swayed back and forth in a rigid rhythm as he repeated the song in the exact same tone, over and over. I couldn't see his face. The porch light didn't reach him. I didn't open the door, I just watched. He finished the song and, without pause, started again, identical in every way. Same tone, same breath patterns, same pauses, no variance at all. No human sings like that. It was like listening to a broken recording, empty and mechanical. I turned off the lights and backed away, hoping that if he thought I wasn't home, he'd leave. But when the singing stopped, I realized that was much worse. I heard slow footsteps in the snow, heavy, deliberate, moving away from the porch and toward the side of the cabin, toward the window. I knew I shouldn't look, but I did. I pulled the curtain back just an inch. At first I didn't see anything, then a head rose slowly into view beneath a window frame. His face was visible now, pale, expressionless, blank. His eyes looked hollow. His lips were slightly parted, but the song I'd heard had not come from that mouth. There was no movement there, not even breath. Then his head tilted to the side, stiff and puppet-like. There was a strange, inhuman curiosity in his stare. A sickening fear surged through me, and I stepped back. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911. As the operator spoke, I heard a metallic groan from the rear of the cabin. Someone was forcing the back door. It sounded like the wood itself was being pulled apart. Every few seconds there was a guttural, almost animalistic cry, nothing like a word or a shout, just raw intent, anger, persistence. The operator told me to hide somewhere safe. The small storage room was my only option. I sprinted inside and held the door shut with my arms. There wasn't even a lock, but at least it was a barrier. The assault on the back door continued for a while, then suddenly stopped. Silence spilled through the cabin like a weight. Minutes later, I heard sirens. Police swept through the cabin. The back door had clear marks where it had been forced. Outside, the snow under the window was heavily disturbed. Footprints ran from the porch to the window, then around to the back door. But when one of the officers examined them closely, he frowned. "These prints, they're not normal," he said. "The weight distribution is off, like the person stepped with all their weight on a single point. And the spacing, it's too long for a normal stride." The footprints continued toward the woods, then abruptly vanished, as if the person had simply lifted off the ground. The officers filed a report and left. I didn't sleep at all that night. When morning finally came, the snow had fallen even deeper. The world was quiet, unnervingly quiet. My nerves were still raw when I pulled the curtain open slightly. That's when I saw it. A red knit hat under the porch. It absolutely had not been there last night. A heavy pressure settled in my chest. Someone must have placed it there, but when? How close had he come? Then I noticed something else. Footprints. Not mine. The fresh snow made them perfectly clear. The prints started at my forced back door and led to the shadowed space beneath the porch. Someone had crouched there for a long time, long enough to compress the snow into deep, dark impressions. They moved back and forth, again and again, approaching, retreating, repeating. as if someone had been waiting. My heart hammered so hard I thought the glass might rattle in the frame. The only thought in my head was, he never left. The man I thought had run into the woods hadn't gone anywhere, even with the police outside, even with sirens and flashing lights. He stayed, just hiding, a few steps away from me, all night long. The red hat felt like a marker, a message, a reminder. My eyes followed the footprints to where they ended abruptly at the tree line. It didn't look like someone walked away. It looked like someone stepped forward and then simply stopped touching the ground, gone in the same directionless silence he had arrived in. I swallowed hard, my throat burned. Even fresh snowfall hadn't erased the depth of those prints. Sometimes, when the wind moves through the branches, I swear I can hear a muffled melody, that same Jingle Bells rhythm, too faint to be real, but too familiar to ignore. Maybe it's just in my head, maybe not. But one thing is certain. Those footprints that morning didn't just prove someone had followed me, they proved he wasn't finished. My name is Liam Harper. I was 10 years old that year. My family had just moved to a small town called Halleridge. My dad had quit his job to escape the chaos of city life, and my mum had opened a little boutique. The town was quiet, everything covered in snow, and as Christmas approached, people were decorating their homes with lights. The street lamps reflecting off the snow made the nights feel like a storybook world. Everything seemed innocent, but that year I would learn that innocence can sometimes be the scariest thing of all. That year, my family decided to go to a big stadium near town. It was my dad's surprise, a chance to see a major basketball game. I was beyond excited. When the day came and we walked through the stadium doors, the lights blinded me. The cheers from the stands made my heart race. My dad held my hand tightly. My mom was pointing the camera everywhere, trying to capture every moment. Among the crowd, I felt safe. But as the noise of the crowd filled my ears, a strange unease crept into me. Every loud cheer, every shadow that flickered across the stands, sparked a small flame of fear inside me. A few minutes later, though, I lost sight of my parents because I wasn't paying attention. I was alone in the crowd. Every sound, every movement around me felt like a threat. The cheers in the stands turned into a dull, menacing hum. My heart raced, my breath became shallow. As I took a step, a man approached me. He smiled and said, "Lost, huh? Come on, I'll take you to your family." His voice sounded reassuring, but there was a coldness in his face, a silent threat that made my skin crawl. Instinctively, I followed him. He led me through the stadium's back corridors and up narrow staircases. The hallways were dimly lit, shadows moving in every corner as if something else was watching us. It felt like a deserted, dark, and silent place. The echo of his footsteps filled my ears. "Let me go, let me go," I shouted, but he just smiled. His smile was so hollow it felt like an empty mask. That was when I found an opening and ran. My feet pounded the floor, my lungs burning. I bumped into a security guard. The man hesitated for just a moment. That tiny pause was the start of my escape. When we got back home, I saw a pair of eyes through the rear window of our car. He held a flashlight. My dad didn't notice. My mom didn't notice. But I saw it. That's when I realized this wasn't a one-time thing. It was the first sign of an obsession. As the days went by, walking through the streets of Halleridge became harder and harder. Every dark corner, every shadowed tree seemed to hold his gaze. Even when sitting at my dad's office and looking out the window, I could feel his eyes glowing among the shadows. One day, as I walked back from the store, a car slowed behind me. Someone inside looked at me. The familiar coldness in his eyes rekindled the fear I had felt as a child. I had to run. My footsteps echoed through the quiet streets, and the light falling on the snow felt like a trap. That Christmas Eve, someone knocked on our door. My dad opened it, but no one was there. Only the snow-covered sidewalk and silence. The wind blew lightly, and snowflakes tapped against the windows, sending a shiver down my spine. The next day I found a note on my bedroom window: "We'll see each other again this Christmas." My hand shook, my heart felt like it would leap out of my chest. My family called the police and filed a report, but the man was never found. Months passed, and Christmas lights continued to terrify me every year. Every crowded stadium, every street decorated with lights reminded me of his eyes. Going to basketball games was now impossible, but the fear wasn't limited to our town. One summer, while shopping in a big city, a stranger parted a crowd in a toy store and looked right at me. The cold curiosity in his eyes reignited the fear I had felt years ago. One Christmas morning, home alone, the doorbell rang. No one was there, but when I noticed the window, there was a note written on the glass. "Are you ready?" My heart stopped for a moment. My dad and mum were in the next room. They didn't see a thing, but I knew he was still after me. Since that year, every Christmas, walking through the streets of Halleridge became a nightmare. While the town glowed with lights, I walked among shadows. One day, under the Christmas lights in the park, I saw him sitting on a bench, tall, in a thick coat, with eyes shining like flashlights. He seemed about to disappear into the crowd, but he was staring right at me. I had to run. As the years went by, his presence became a part of my life. At my dad's office, at the grocery store, walking home from school, I felt like I could see him everywhere. Over time, my fear didn't lessen, it just took on a new form. Now, every Christmas, I know that the fear isn't just in the sparkle of the lights, it's in the depths of the shadows. Today, I'm exactly 16 years old. My dad is still reading the newspaper. My mum is still cooking in the kitchen. But I'm still looking out the window, searching for a shadow beneath the Christmas lights, and I know he's still with me. Every New Year's Eve, with every falling snowflake, his shadow roams the silent streets of Halleridge. And I'm still learning to be ready, because his shadow has been with me since childhood, and every Christmas Eve, it's not just the lights that fall, it's the shadows too, across Halleridge. The wind was whipping snow crystals against my face like tiny needles. As I stood in the small clearing we'd found in the forest, trying to catch my breath, the handle of the little handsaw trembled in my palm. Cutting our own Christmas tree on Christmas Eve had always been a family tradition, but that day the forest felt quiet in a different way. Not the quiet of nature, but the quiet of something listening. "Caleb, how about this one?" My wife Marissa called from behind her thick scarf. When I turned, I saw our daughter Lucy pointing at a fir tree with her mittened hand. It really did look beautiful, full, even a perfect postcard tree. "I think it's perfect," I said, forcing a smile. We'd managed to get our four-wheel drive up here, but the snow was deeper than expected. Evening shadows were already settling between the trees. I bent to start cutting, but a strange twinge passed through me, a sudden awareness. The feeling that someone was watching us. I hadn't felt something this sharp in years. Not even during my deployment in Afghanistan. I stopped sawing. "Something wrong?" Marissa asked. "Let's just finish quickly," I said, "before the cold sets in." As I leaned forward again, I heard a faint crunch of snow behind us. When I turned, I saw a man's silhouette between the trees about 30 feet away. Tall, extremely tall. He wore an old hunter's cap, his face lost in shadow, a brown coat, faded pants, muddy boots. His hands were in his pockets, and he was standing completely still, just staring at us. The warning inside me grew sharper. "Hello," I called, trying to sound normal. "We're just picking out a tree." The man didn't respond. He simply tilted his head slightly, as if trying to understand us or calculate something. Lucy grabbed my hand, her small fingers trembling. "Daddy, why isn't he talking?" "Maybe he's just a hunter," I said, though even to me, my voice sounded wrong. The man took one step forward. The sound of his boot on the snow felt like a scream tearing through the silence. "Marissa, forget the tree. We're leaving." She started to protest, but when she saw my face, she fell silent. I put Lucy in front of me and we walked quickly. The man didn't follow, at least. It didn't look like it, but I didn't stop until his silhouette disappeared. A few minutes later, between the pines, I saw another dark shape. The same tall figure, closer this time, motionless. I didn't dare blink. Marissa, pick up the pace. When we reached the truck, the nightmare truly began. As we hurried toward our Ford pickup, Marissa let out a sharp scream. The tires, all four of them, were completely flat. The snow, pristine only minutes before, was now disturbed with clear knife marks around the rubber. How is this possible? Marissa whispered. The soldier in me kicked in. Get in the truck, lock the doors. I grabbed my phone, no signal. There was always at least 2 bars up here. Something was very wrong. Lucy pressed close to her mother. Daddy, what does that man want? I don't know, I said, but he won't hurt us, I promise. I almost believed it just then. From deep in the forest, 3 more figures appeared. Different heights, but dressed similarly, dark coats, worn pants, blank expressionless faces that almost looked like masks. Their steps were slow, deliberate, but they were coming toward us. I could see their tracks clearly in the snow. Marissa's breath fogged the window. Caleb, my God, what do we do? The locked doors felt like cardboard. Try calling the police, I said. No signal. Try again. The first man had reappeared, moving between the trees. Snowflakes drifted around him in the wind, but his face stayed buried in shadow. The 4 strangers tightened their circle around the truck. Marissa was crying now. Lucy was praying under her breath in the backseat. I pulled out my multi-tool, the only thing I had. My heart hammered as the strangers walked closer. A few more steps and they'd be at the doors. And then a sound cut through the darkness. A siren, a police siren. Red and blue lights flashed through the trees. The strangers froze. Then, as if silently coordinated, they scattered into the forest quickly, but not in panic, more like moving to the next step of whatever they had planned. A police cruiser stopped behind our truck. 2 officers got out, older stone-faced Officer O'Reilly and younger Officer Collins. They unlocked our doors and pulled us out. What happened? O'Reilly asked, out of breath. We got an anonymous call. Someone reported a scream in this area. Anonymous, I said. We didn't call anyone. Marissa covered her face. There were people here, watching us. They slashed our tires. Collins knelt in the snow. His flashlight gleamed over the cuts. Definitely intentional. O'Reilly swept his light across the trees. You said you saw multiple individuals. 4, I said, but at least one of them had been watching us for longer. The officers moved into the woods with their flashlights. We waited by the truck as the wind picked up, the forest's moan drowning everything else. 10 minutes later they returned, both looking troubled. There are tracks, O'Reilly said, but eventually they overlap. Looks deliberate, like they tried to confuse their trail. It's clear they're a group. They might be using this area as a base. What are they? I asked. We're not sure, O'Reilly admitted. There have been a few disappearances lately. Some campers reported stolen supplies and vandalized tents. We thought it might be a group of homeless squatters living off the grid, but this is the first sign they're organized. Organized, the word twisted in my gut. Marissa clung to my arm. Were we targeted? Collins looked away, never a good sign. Probably not random, he said quietly. As we climbed into the cruiser, I looked back one last time. The forest was silent again, too silent, even the sirens couldn't drown it out. Lucy leaned against me. Daddy, what about our Christmas tree? My throat tightened. We'll get a new one, sweetheart. But my mind was elsewhere, on the man whose eyes had met mine just before the police lights hit him. That look. A message from the darkness: tonight is over, but not finished. The stove was burning. The house looked safe, but I felt nothing. My shoulder ached, not from work, but from tension buried deep in my bones. Marissa was asleep, Lucy too. I sat by the window, listening to the wind. A snowstorm had started, and the lights flickered. My hands shook around the mug of hot tea. Then, something moved. At the far edge of our yard, where the trees began, a dark shape stood. Then another, then a third. I wasn't imagining it. They were real, just as real as the snow around them. But this time they didn't come closer. They stood at the tree line, just watching, as if saying, "The place you think is safe, is only the other side of the same line. We live in the forest, and Christmas is just beginning. I closed my eyes, opened them again. The snow had thickened, blurring everything. The figures were gone, or just hidden. Then I heard a noise on the front porch, soft like metal being placed on wood. I forced myself to open the door, flashlight in hand. Something small lay on the porch. A bell, like a Christmas bell but old, rusted, dirty. A single word was carved into it with a blade. BACK. My breath froze in my chest, my knees weakened. In that moment I understood. We left the forest, but the forest did not leave us.